Chicago business activity down. Unemployment up. I'm calling it. Chicago's in a recession. It's not just Chicago. We're going to focus on Chicago today. I think Washington State's in a recession. I think Oregon's in a recession. You got a bunch of these states and big cities. I think San Francisco's in a recession. People just aren't talking about it. They're like, well, maybe. I'm calling Chicago because you know why? With the way that the progressive revenue thing is going, there's no way they can't be going into a recession, even if they're not in one now. But I'm calling it now. Let's get into it. Here we go. WirePoint's executive editor, Mark Glennon, isn't holding back on what to make of Chicago's stumbling economy. Stumbling. Isn't that great? It's like somebody's coming out of a bar. They've had 12 Bud Lights. Going back to the old days before, you know, that whole thing with Bud Light, stumbling out of the bar, right? Lighting the smoke, stumbling. It's like Chicago's economy, stumbling, including 23 straight months. Let me repeat that. 23 straight months of decreased business activity and an unemployment rate that falls well below the national average. What's the definition of recession for the United States? 2 consecutive quarters of downward GDP, right? I'm calling it. You got 23 straight months. You basically got 2 years, not 2 quarters. Got 2 years of decreased business activity and really nothing on the horizon that says, hey, Chicago's on the come up. Chicago's making a comeback. Don't call it a comeback, right? Little LL Cool J there. Right. Decreased business activity and an unemployment rate that falls well below the national average. The score below 50 representing a decline in business. Chicago Business Barometer researchers recently graded the city at 43.8 on the strength of metrics. You got supply chain data, new orders, inventories, production, employment trends, and supplier delivery. So really the guts of business. You know, downtown core, that we're not even getting into vacancy rates. We're not even getting into the kids running around looting stores. You know, we're not even getting into the murder rate in the suburbs. Not talking about any of those. We're just talking about business metrics. At the same time, the city's unemployment rate stands at 4.9 compared to 4.6 across the rest of the country. Now, most unemployment rates, unless you got a city that's had some massive economic thing, they're fairly close to what the rest of the country is at. So this one slightly under. All right. Obviously, it's not for want of natural assets, Glennon told the Center Square. We've been blessed, talking about Chicago, with things that most cities in the world would kill for, just like Seattle, just like Portland, just like San Fran. You got amazing mountain views. You got the ocean. You got rivers. You got geography, right? You got great geography. It's just that libtards have been attracted to said cities in massive numbers, and they just destroy them with their policies. Just absolutely undercut them, destroy them. Most cities in the world would kill for transportation city at the center of the country, wonderful universities. All these things were handed to us by previous generations, and then you wrecked them. And then you hired to be your CEO. Let's go, Brandon Johnson. What's he doing? Just running it into the ground. Because he's a school teacher union dude. There's nothing wrong with Illinois or our people. It's our government that has failed us, and it's because they have shown a total indifference to fundamental economics and simple common sense. Sounds familiar. Sounds like Washington State, right? Sounds like Portland. Sounds like New York. Just lacking common sense. Does this make sense? Does socialism make sense? Yes, it does. Socialism makes sense for those who don't work. Such a great coffee cup. You can buy that on the merch. The only employment gains over that time coming in sectors such as education and health services. Probably some governmental positions as well. Perhaps the most damning figure of all this is in recent years, any job growth that we have had has been from the government. Obviously, that doesn't work. Taxpayers have to pay for those government jobs, and taxpayers aren't there because they're not employed. Sad fact is, Illinois has become a drag on the national economy Chicago increasingly is a drag on the state of Illinois. Doom is the right word for it. Ooh, that's not good. Let's hear from Let's Go Brandon Johnson, because why wouldn't we, right? Let's hear what this genius has to say. Let's go.
Waiting for you to be specific about what is progressive revenue.
I mean, Tomas, you know what progressive revenue is. Listen, the governor spent his own money for progressive income tax, of which 84% of black folks.
We don't have that. We have a graduated income tax.
But your question was, Tomas, respectfully, your question was, what are the specifics? We know the specifics around progressive revenues. What did the Speaker of the House say? He said we should have a millionaire's tax. He said it. The state of Illinois fought for a progressive income tax. I know they're looking at a digital ad tax. There's no secret around here of where the money is hyper concentrated. And as Democrats, we're either going to fold to Trump's cuts or we are going to roll him over.
Now, the thing that you're watching is across the United States, the socialists, and let's go Brandon Johnson. He's just a progressive Democrat, right? He's a knucklehead. He's a teachers union guy. He's not necessarily a socialist, but what they're all doing is pointing at Trump's cuts and saying, we are being impacted by Trump's cuts. Our budgets are being impacted and our core services are being impacted. They're really not, because you've already got a budget for that. You've already got a budget for that. The other stuff that Trump is cutting, you can't point to that and say, this is terrible. We need to increase revenue. You just don't. You don't need all those programs that are you don't need to be spending $350 million on feeding and housing and medical care for the criminal illegal aliens. But if you were to hear Let's Go Brandon Johnson talk, you would think that literally the tariffs and the cuts are what are bringing on Chicago's demise. It's just simply not true. 23 months of business decline. Let's see, when was Trump put into office? Oh, yeah, less than a year ago. Okay. So anyway, no, this is it's nonsense that politicians say. Let's Go Brandon Johnson says it. Everybody in Washington State says it. Trump's tariffs. And it's like, no, that is not what's impacting the massive budget shortfall you have. It's your consistent overspending and your inability to rectify that you've got so much income coming in, and here's your expenses, trying to make those work.
And I am saying that as working people, we have to roll over this Trump administration and ensure that we have the revenue to continue to hire people, to continue to educate our children, to continue to make sure that we have good paying jobs, to continue to make sure that we're protecting people's retirement, to make sure that our transportation system is running. The Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, they're recognizing the economic comeback of Chicago and how Trump's
Didn't we just say that Moody's gave a rating to Chicago, the decline in business activity the last 23 months? Okay, but so Chicago's on a comeback. That's what we're saying? Where's the metric on that? Where's the, decrease in vacancy space in downtown Chicago? Do you have that? Do you have any metrics that show that Chicago, Illinois, is on the comeback? No.
Cuts are hurting that. I'm going to present a budget that challenges the ultra rich to pay their fair share in taxes. I'm going to challenge.
Which they already do. They're called businesses, and they're who hires people. Let's go, Brandon Johnson. Right? Without those jobs, you're host. And that is why 10,000 businesses have left Illinois in the last decade. It's some crazy number like that. Everybody's pulling out. Just like they'll pull out of Washington State, and just like they have big employers like Amazon have pulled out of Seattle, and they've sent 10,000 jobs here to Bellevue because of an employer tax, right? Tax on employers, tax on business. This is what happens. So I can comfortably say, hey, you're already in a recession, because what's coming on the horizon to make up for, $1 billion deficit and the way that these Democrats handle things, it's not going to work. It's just going to get worse. And so those 23 months, So when it's 36 months, another year from now, we'll be talking about this. Is anybody saying they're in a recession? They're either in one, we're not sure, or there's a high probability. That's what most of the metrics go with. There's a high probability. What's the difference, right? Where's that tipping point? I'm just calling it because this ain't getting any better.
Our corporations, particularly those who have received tax cuts from the president, have to put more skin in the game. Look, the president's cuts are real. He's cutting our public education system. He's cutting off our public transportation investment.
No, he's not. He's simply not. You're a moron.
He's literally withholding over $2 billion for the south side of Chicago. We fought 50 years to get that done. We got it done in my time as mayor. And now he's withholding those dollars. Every single area.
Maybe he should be. Let's go, Brandon. Because you're an incompetent leader. You've got all kinds of scenarios going on that don't make any sense at all. And if there's funds withheld, it's for a damn good reason. It's kind of like that Somali issue you got going on in Minnesota. What? The autism fraud. What is up with that? You've got some leadership in these big Dem cities and these big Dem states that is just like, wow, this is insane. You guys are insane thinking you're going to work your way out of this. And all it's going to do is just cut their own throat because businesses are going to leave. And they've already left in droves. But let's double down and hire Let's Go Brandon Johnson, and we'll see what happens. Greatest thing ever. It's going to be greatest thing ever. We're going to hire Let's Go Brandon Johnson, and we'll just roll the dice. And hey, what could go wrong?
Where descendants of slaves have fought for accommodations by the government, that's what he's attacking.
But I hear this stuff so often, and I'm like, what in the F are you literally, what are you talking about? You know, it's drivel. It's drivel. Here we go. On a state level, Governor J.B. Pritzker said state agencies need to trim 4%, blaming Donald Trump and a slowing national economy instead of taking personal responsibility. Yeah, we've been absolutely just destroying our own local economies with our own terrible policy. We got to point to something else. Trump, orange man bad. And a slowing national economy. Illinois' economic woes started long before Trump. Another major issue with people saying that, it's Trump's, it's a map we're going to look at here. It's Trump's tariffs that are impacting this. The major things that have caused costs to rise are like housing, food costs, healthcare, childcare, energy costs. And a lot of those are not really impacted by the tariffs. Some of them are. There's like a 1 out of 5, 20% are impacted by the tariffs. Okay. But that isn't what's causing you 23 straight months of business decline in Chicago. It's businesses leaving and all of those metrics because your policies, your high taxes and what you're giving them for their taxes, just like Oregon, like what Washington State's becoming more and more, and it's becoming more and more rapidly because you've got these massive budgets and we're not cutting any of them. We're spending more. Tax and spend. Genius. Illinois is 1 out of 16 states at high risk of recession. So this is Moody's chief economist, Mark Zandi. He came up with these states and he basically said, Washington, high risk. Oregon, interestingly enough, California's got such a big economy. That one is treading water along with Nevada. Now we move on to ones that are expanding. Texas? Interesting. Arizona? Interesting. Utah? Interesting. Idaho? Interesting. And we got North Dakota. South Dakota having some issues, right? Nebraska in an expansion. And then, you get to Illinois, recession / high risk. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I think that's Minnesota, same thing. Iowa. These aren't hard calls to make, not hard calls to make. So here's the Moody's Analytics, business activity, 23-month decline. The Chicago, Naperville metro area's real gross domestic product, smaller growth, 2.2%. Illinois' real GDP fell by 2.2%. All the metrics are there. Employment growth down. Fiscal year, Chicago's facing a projected budget deficit of nearly $1 billion. So that's why, Let's Go Brandon Johnson is talking about progressive, revenue, because he's just going to tax big business, and whatever's left, they don't seem to care that they're literally cutting their own throats. And that's where I'm like, do we not see where this is going? How can we not see where this is going? I don't think they care. I think this is the game plan. Let's go ahead and destroy these states. Let's just go ahead and destroy these cities. Because what other excuse would you have for people that are elected officials making these decisions? It's such a head scratcher, right? Because it's this workers of the world unite. But where that goes sideways is the whole first word in that sentence. Workers. You got to have a job. If your employer leaves your city, leaves your state, whatever. We just had Microsoft here. They had 5 building sites in the Spring District, which is just half a mile up the road from where I'm sitting, literally on Belred Road at 124th. I'm at 134th in Belred Road. They had 5 building sites that they could take down and build additional office space. And because of Washington and kind of this tenuous outlook on what's going to go on with, statewide employer tax, a Washington state, one of our legislators, Sean Scott, who ran against Andrea Suarez and won. He's a socialist. He's proposing any employee that's making over $125,000 gets taxed 5% over that. A massive tax, a massive employee tax that goes to the corporation, and they're looking at that as progressive revenue because we got to make up for the cuts that Daddy Trump has given us. So, but then you've got this concept where those businesses will leave. Microsoft not taking down those 5 spots a half mile up the road because they're like, why would we go long term with building a whole bunch more office space if we're going to pull out of Washington state, or if we want the option, maybe we lease somewhere else instead of building. Those kinds of things. Those decisions are being made. Those decisions get made way ahead of when they actually get, released to the press. So you're on the front end of it. Consumer spending. As of November 2025, shoppers in Chicago were reported to be scaling back spending due to inflation and recession fears. Chicago real estate professionals have unsure outlook for rest of this year. Most expect recession by end of 2026. You're in it now. Let's be honest. You're in it now. Just knuckle under, take it, and go, I love Let's Go Brandon Johnson. Skipping cocktails and splitting meals. Recession indicators hit Chicago restaurants. Take just a peek see. Fewer people are going out to eat in Chicago and are spending less when they do as consumers brace for a potential recession, which they're already in. The media never gets this right because they don't want to be that first report going, hey, you said we're in a recession. Yep. Well, you look at the data and you go, okay, yeah, you're in one. And it's just going to get worse. So this is an easy call. Restaurant operators report that revenue and foot traffic have slumped this year, and it's not going to get any better. When you've got knuckleheads like Let's Go Brandon Johnson in office, there's only one way that can go, and it ain't up, right? While the first quarter is always tough for restaurants, people may be trying to eat healthier, pay off holiday debt, or are simply hibernating. Many operators say this year has been worse than normal because you're in a recession. Now, with the weather warming, the crowds aren't returning like they should. My customers are telling me we're not going out to eat as much right now. Times are a little tough. I'm here in Washington State. Things have just gotten so expensive here that why would I go out to eat? I'm going to go out to eat tonight, but I'm going out to my buddy Dan's bar. So I'm supporting one of my friend's businesses, and I'm okay with that. Is it expensive? It is certainly more expensive than it was even just a couple of years ago, but everything is more expensive. And that's why you've got businesses like Rogue Brewery or Rogue Spirits and Ale or whatever the name it is down in Oregon. You can only raise the cost of a pint of beer so much. That was the second largest brewery in the state of Oregon. And they just, boom, just closed down, just out of the blue. Boom, we're done. You can only charge so much for a beer, but you've got all these expenses going into it. And you're like, all right, what do we cut? Well, we can't cut employees. We need them. We can't cut rent. And Rogue Brewery they were upside down, I think $1 million in taxes and rent. I mean, just crazy numbers. Chicago homeowners line up outside Cook County Assessor's office after property tax bills skyrocket. I've done a separate podcast on this. I mean, the Cook County taxpayers, if I'm getting this right off of memory, Cook County taxpayers are paying 2% of their assessed value each year in taxes. Could you imagine? No thanks. Hard no-go. And I've talked about this story a million times, and I think this article right here talks about it as well. You got sticker shock. Property tax bills in the south and west sides have skyrocketed. And what's happened is the downtown core, all the businesses have moved out. In combination with businesses moving out, you had that whole work from home thing during the pandemic, and that has continued for all downtown cores. There's no downtown core that wasn't impacted from that. But ones that have better street conditions and better tax favorability, meaning better tax incentive for these businesses, they're going to have a better chance at rebuilding their downtown core. Chicago ain't one of those cities. So you've got all these areas in the downtown core that are being hollowed out. Money's got to come from somewhere to pay for all these social welfare programs. It's going to come from the taxpayers, the homeowners, because everybody needs a house over their head. Businesses don't necessarily need rent. They don't need physical structure because they can have everybody work from home. Hey, just go work from home like we did in the pandemic. Here in Washington State, we were told it was 15 days to flatten the curve by our illustrious Governor King Inslee. Close down all the businesses except for the big ones. Except for the big ones. Leave them open because, people got to get food from somewhere. That was the most nonsense I have ever seen. Just months and months of absolute nonsense. That's when it became really, really apparent. All right, Democrats are going this direction. Republicans are going this direction. What state do you want to be in? Not Washington State, because you got a bunch of knuckleheads running it. Wild stuff, right? So you got a tax issue here in Chicago. Is that going to get any better? No. You're only able to squeeze so much. And then what are you going to do? You're going to throw in a bunch of more taxes. Just boop, boop. There you go, guys. Take these taxes and enjoy. And this is the one story that I keep bringing up because it's just so shocking. My tax bill had doubled. It went from $9,600 to $19,100. How are people expected to pay that? I don't know. I mean, could you imagine? That's an insane amount in taxes. Insane. On a home that you already own, that his great-grandfather or some damn thing built, right? So, Chicago, in a recession? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's clear as day. Nobody wants to talk about it, though, because then you're committed to, well, how are you going to get out of it? Progressive revenue? All right. You know what? Let's give it a whirl. Let's go, Brandon Johnson. Let's give progressive revenue a whirl because we're already doing that in New York City. I'm Donnie. Progressive revenue. Washington State. Progressive revenue with our new socialist mayor of Seattle. Our new socialist state representative, Sean Scott. Hey, let's see what happens when you tax the absolute F out of the entire state. Will businesses stay? He's literally, I've got a bunch of podcasts coming up on this. Sean Scott is the dude's name, and he looks just like a junior, let's go Brandon Johnson. And he is more concerned with the school teacher. He is more concerned with the school teacher leaving Washington State than he is big business. It's like, okay, but school teacher, taxes pay for her position at a public school, right? And who pays all those taxes? Well, the vast majority of them are paid by big business. So you're not concerned about who pays the taxes. You're concerned with who consumes them, because he's trying to spin this as that's who he's concerned with. Well, the teacher isn't going to have a job if she doesn't have the income from the employer paying taxes. All those employers leave, because why would they stay? And that's what we've seen in Seattle. Perfect case study. In real estate appraisal, we call that a matched pair analysis, meaning what's the attribute? How much is the difference for the third car garage stall? You got a house with a 2-car garage and you got a house with a 3-car garage. All things else being this absolute same, which never happens, and that's why real estate appraisal ideology is flawed at best. But if everything was absolutely the same and they sold on the same exact date, the difference in price would be what you would attribute to that third garage stall. And so you've already got a matched pair analysis of what happens when you go ahead and tax big business. Amazon sends 10,000 employees to Bellevue from Seattle. And if you do that on a statewide basis, you do that on a citywide basis, like Let's Go Brandon Johnson's doing. And, thousands of businesses have already left Chicago. It's the writing's on the wall. So Chicago in a recession? Hell yes. We'll keep reporting on this. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you subscribe. Do all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again. Bye for now.